important thing that we did was we added an opponent for proponent for awareness. So the local school districts or our education in South Carolina, they will have to inform students, teachers, parents, and the Attorney General's office has to make the general public aware of Gavin's law going forward.
Wonderful.
And that is going to fight
Huge.
the tremendous battle. We got it through committee after crossover. So I was told, well, you're not going to be able to get it to the Senate. They're not going to go through it. But one of the most important things I would say was on the House floor. Whenever it came to the House floor, I expected, I didn't expect to have anyone really opposing me on it. But the surprising part was whenever I went up there, I had Representative Sessions, Representative Lawson, and Representative Cox. We joke around and call ourselves the porch caucus because we sit on the back porch and think we're solving the world's problems. And I asked them to just come and stand behind me for support. I knew it was going to be tough to talk without crying in front of everyone. And whenever I went up there to speak, 2/3 of the legislators got up out of their desk and come and stood behind me. Standing ovation, passed with no opposition whatsoever. Went to the Senate, and then I was told it's not going to get a Senate hearing, so we're going to have to address this next year. Ended up getting a couple of champions in the Senate that started moving it forward. And then whenever it came to the Senate floor, I think it was Senator Sin made the amendment for our education proponent of it to be annually. So instead of it just being a one-time notification to everyone in the state, now every year it has to be reported, which was huge.
Huge, yeah.
Yes. And then whenever it went to the floor, in South Carolina, we have a rule that you can't name a law after someone because we've had tremendous amounts. I think the last bill that would pass with someone's name on it was called Peanuts Law, about a construction worker that was killed doing DOT work. But people started naming laws after dogs and trying to use that against people's heartstrings. So the Senate passed a rule that they will not take up any bill with a name on it, and they will not pass any bill with a name on it. While that was important to me, it was more important to get the law passed. And whenever I showed up to the Senate on the floor, the day of the floor, Senator Clymer submitted an amendment, and he couldn't read it. So he had another senator actually read it for him up there to name it Gavin's Law. And I thought for sure there's a senator that would object to it. He stood up. I was like, here we go. So he's going to object to it. But instead, he requested the roll of the Senate to be put on that amendment. So every senator's name was put on that amendment, and then it passed unanimously. And at that time, the president of the Senate, which I've never seen happen, told everyone to stand at ease, and every senator, including the president, come down, shook my hand, gave me a hug, offered words of encouragement. So there's been a lot of big moments throughout this.
Yeah,
up until the point
that mean to you though, when all of those big moments kept happening that are so rare in politics, that's moving. I mean, I am emotional listening to you tell the story. I can't imagine what it was like for you being there.
it's huge. Don't get me wrong. I can be a bit of a bull in a china shop at times. So the hard part was me trying to cool my temper. I think one of the first meetings I had with the governor, congratulate me on how fast things were moving. And I said, I don't really think it's moving that fast. And he said, it's really moving fast to be a freshman. And I said, well, we passed an economic development deal in 10 days. And he said, well, it had a deadline on it. And I said, well, what's the deadline on saving children? So I think laws need to be able to move quicker whenever something like this is involved. Now, the one thing that a lot of the attorneys pointed out, and I thought was a great point, just as my son was a kid that made the mistake of sharing photos to begin with, I don't want someone else's kid that threatens, if you break up with me, I'm going to share this photo, for them looking at getting 20 years in prison. So whenever it comes to minors, we're leaving the decision up to family court to handle that. And that was something I didn't think about before, but having those open conversations with all different sectors makes a difference.
We'll talk about the difference between what happened to Gavin and a boyfriend-girlfriend breakup. That's totally different. Explain the
Right.
situation so people understand that a little better.
So with what happened to Gavin, I'm on my phone, so I can't pull up the statistics, but I believe it was one out of six kids under the age of 18 have admitted to sharing an intimate photo. More than half of them see no problem with it because of the disappearing apps. They grow up in this age of sharing intimate photos and having online relationships.
Sure.
In Gavin's case, he was a sexually active teenager. I would constantly tell him, I'm not here to make decisions for you. You're almost old enough to fight for this country. I'm here to guide you in the decisions that you make. So we had a very open relationship. We talked to one another about many different things. Sometimes things that parents wouldn't talk, but I believe that fathers and sons, especially, or mothers and daughters, should have those open conversations. I'm not saying that you got to be their friend, but whenever they're at that age, they need someone more of guidance instead of preaching to them at that point.
Right.
What happened to Gavin was he was literally targeted, which is what's happening to all of these teens that are dying across the country.